there, and welcome to the Music Minds podcast. My name is Tony Fennell, and joining me in our weekly dig into the goings-on of the music industry is my co-host, John Stone. How are you, John? How you doing, mate?
Oh, hanging in there, Tony. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving break.
Wasn't too bad. Wasn't too bad.
Yeah, weather aside.
I was as sick as a dog. I'm lying completely.
Yikes, yeah. Well, I was going to say, at least the one good thing was I didn't go anywhere, so I didn't have to deal with all the travel and stuff.
Nice. Well, look, there's nothing wrong with Thanksgiving. For me, it's great when it's over. I should stop. I'm just a miserable old geezer. That's what it is, you see, John. Anyway, today's show is called Going Round in Circles, the pros and cons of the 360 deal. Oh, boy. So are you ready for this, John? Because I know you love this subject.
Sure, why not?
The one thing that comes up on this podcast on a regular basis is the emergence of an artist contract known as the 360 record deal. I'd say that over the last 10 years or so, these types of contracts and deals have become more and more commonplace. And by the looks of things, this trend won't be ending anytime soon. Look, we all want to get signed, but as John and I have pointed out in a number of our podcasts, if your band is presented with one of these contracts, you really need to know exactly what type of deal this is before you sign away your music and, as we'll explain during this podcast, a whole host of other potential revenue streams. Not all 360s are bad. Maybe John's got a different opinion, but but while these contracts can sometimes work to your advantage, they also carry a certain amount of risk, and in some cases, a hell of a lot more risk than other recording contracts. On today's show, we're going to try and break down exactly what these agreements are so that you know what to look out for before you sign on the proverbial dotted line. So let's get down to the nitty gritty. First things first, what exactly is a 360 record contract? If I do a quick overview, John, and then you kick it into touch, right?
Sure.
Here we go. The traditional record contracts, artists are typically given money, or an advance as it's called, from the label to record an album. And then the record company takes a percentage of record sales after the album is released, in addition to recouping the advance, of course. The same deals usually end up with the label not particularly running any other aspect of the band's career, including touring, except for perhaps an advance for tour support, and generally merchandise revenue stays with the band and their management. But, here we go, in a 360 deal, however, the record company has its hand in most or all aspects of the band, including the aforementioned touring and merchandise revenue, and in return for this, the record company is responsible for spending more time building the brand of the artist, and with the growth of the band and the brand, the 360 label will invest even more money towards the cost of touring, merchandise, and other expenses. Now, I've been involved in a few of these deals over the years, so I have my own opinion on whether they're friend or foe, but I'd like to hand it over to you, John, for a somewhat concise and business-like explanation of the 360 phenom. What's your take, mate?
Well, I don't know if I can be concise or businesslike, but I'll delve into it as best I can, since I come from one piece of the puzzle, music industry puzzle here, so to speak, on the publishing side, and I'm always reticent to give up anything without a big pile of money coming back in return.
That's right.
What we're looking at here, and what we'll draw from for this podcast is a great article by a music attorney that I know, actually, I've dealt with personally before, a fellow named Steve Gordon Esquire. He wrote a great article about this in Digital Music News way back in July of 2013. So, as we all know, this has been around for a while, but as you'll remind everyone, Tony, this actually goes much, much further than that. But basically, a 360 deal is an exclusive recording contract with a record label where they're taking on responsibility and also getting compensation for all aspects of you as an artist, potentially as a writer, and as a performing act, so to speak. So they'll get the traditional label share of all of the records that you put out through them, but they're also going to get pieces of other income streams from you and have control of those. That also includes, as you said, Tony, touring, live performance, merchandise, also endorsements. So if you say, I love me some PV bass, PV amps, they're going to set up that deal and they'll get their piece from that. They may also dictate to you which amps you like. Appearances in movies and television. So if you go in and as an actor, which we know now is a big piece of performing artists, they get acting deals as well, because you got to branch out and make yourself as relevant and exposed as possible in this new industry. So if you're appearing in a movie or TV show or something, they'll also have a part of setting that up and getting compensation for it. And then also, and this is where I come in, if you write your own songs, they get a piece of your publishing and they handle that aspect of it for you as well.
Say it ain't so, John. Say it
ain't so. So basically, now I always envisioned, when I heard about these, I was like, well, that's got to be the kind of thing that, like, NSYNC had, where you had
right.
a big time producer or a label or whatnot put together a boy band, for lack of a better term, and had a piece in creating all their music and created their brand and ran their tours. That makes sense. And in that essence, if a label is actually investing the time and energy to put together the project that you're a part of, sure, it makes sense because it's their deal from the beginning. But if you've done it for yourself, as an artist or as a band or whatnot, and you're now being offered this opportunity, in big air quotes, to have a 360 deal with a label, you really need to know all the details of this. You need to know what that label is actually going to deliver for you, the deliverables in this deal, what they're going to take, what maybe you can carve out, and we'll talk about that in a moment, carve outs from the deal, and what exactly are they going to be taking, control of and having the right of first and last refusal, so to speak, on what you're doing with your music and what are you going to get in return. So it's very, very important when you go into a deal like this, if you're considering it, have your eyes open, have very good legal representation. Again, folks, we are not lawyers. We don't even play them on TV, but you want to make sure you're getting represented well. Because, and perfect example of what we've just been talking about, Tony, in the last couple of podcasts, and the last one in particular. Well, imagine if Taylor Swift had a 360 deal with Big Machine.
Wow.
I mean, that poor little rich girl, pardon the expression, but, all those, it wouldn't just be those 6 albums, the masters that they would control. No. It would be everything, and she would be, up a creek without a paddle, so to speak. So
absolutely,
you really want to look, even if you're a first-time artist and you've been so-and-so, so-called discovered by a label or something similar to the way, her career started with Big Machine and Scott Borchetta, you want to make sure that every opportunity is there for you to have a say in your career, have a say in your music, a say in your rights, and also that you're not basically just having all your money go to the label and, you get your advance and then that's basically all you're ever going to get for the rest of your career with them, if not more.
Hey, John, I don't know if you know this, the answer or not. I wonder if Miley Cyrus had a 360 situation with Disney. Because it was that whole thing that went down with her. I mean, she was what was the name of the character? I forgot the character.
Hannah Montana.
Hannah Montana. Well, it shows my age right there, doesn't it? I'm 958 years old. Anyway, so no, I'm just saying, with Hannah Montana, surely they must have owned it lock, stock, and barrel. Name, likeness, you name it, they had it. Now, her getting out of that must have been an interesting situation, her trying to get out of that deal. Maybe it just came to an end, I don't know. But, we'll look into that and see what happened.
Well, and again, you're absolutely right, Tony. We don't know the particulars of this, but also remember that came from a property that was created by Disney. So,
yes.
She is Miley Cyrus. She's gone out and performed and recorded and has a career of her own as herself. And then the Hannah Montana character and all the music that was created for that show. And as you know, Tony, having worked on television and done music for TV, all of that was work for hire for the company, for the production company, which, or in this case, probably was Disney. And they control all those rights. So those are two different pieces. Now, if she wanted to sort of be crazy, which we know she is kind of nuts, and go back and say, I'm going to do a Hannah Montana tour, but I'm going to be Miley doing it and with Miss Wacky Doodle and such, that they might have a right to say, wait a minute, you're not going to, do your crazy stuff with that property, because that's all music controlled by them and that entire entity.
And it's their brand. It's their brand.
Exactly.
End of chat. Sorry, there was a slight digression there, John. Back to our 360 deal, the ones you love so much. much.
Well, but to your point, Tony, I mean that there are so many different ways to, look at this, and that these types of deals can come out of any type of property. You can start off as a character on a show, putting music out, and believe me, they're putting out albums and everything. And then you can then say, all right, well, that contract is over. I'm no longer that character. I'm going to go out, and you've been made famous by being in that show and stuff. So you always wonder what the background machinations of that sort of thing are to say, well, wait a minute, you can, but you can't, and all that sort of thing. So yes, back to 360 deals. I think we were talking about this in a previous podcast. Robbie Williams with EMI back in 2002 was sort of the first big one that we sort of in the modern era, so to speak. But they have become more commonplace over the last few years and stuff. And now I'm starting to see that people are a little more shrewd with their rights, and especially the way there's sort of fracturing of the industry and stuff. People are maybe a little more quick to say be skeptical about this sort of thing. But what you want to do if you're an artist or if you're a band and you're being offered this is you look at every single aspect of that deal and you want to go through it with a fine-tooth comb. What are they giving you? What are the rights they're offering? How are they going to handle those rights? Are they easy to work with? Are they difficult to work with? Do they cost too much? As a publisher, we have certain songs in our catalog that we know are a premium, and we treat them as such. And some people just don't have a budget for that. But if you're a breaking band and you just want to get out there and in particular if you want to build your fan base, certain rights you may want to be more flexible with, you know what I mean? And give your fans the opportunity, especially the way things are shared on TikTok and all other sorts of things. You want to be able to get your music out there in many ways as possible because you're building that fan base. So when you go out on tour, you're not playing to 5 people in the in a 100-person room. So it's very important that any entity that you're working with that's going to offer you this type of thing, how do they handle all of those rights? So if we go back and look. So with your label, all right, you want to make sure you're going to get a good deal, what their percentage is that they're taking, what points you're getting, right? You've signed these record deals, right, Tony?
I have, and it's really catch-22, John, because as you rightly said, you're desperate to get your music out. I mean, let's face facts. I mean, social media allows us all to put stuff out there. Right. But the one thing you can't buy on social media is that opening up spot for Foo Fighters or that opening spot for Taylor Swift. Record companies are incestuous by nature. Everybody loves to love everybody. It's a ridiculous situation that you have to be with the big boys to get on the big shows. Once in a blue moon, you'll get it. But I'm telling you, these 360 deals, they allow stuff to happen tomorrow. You're not sitting around. You're going, all of a sudden, I've got a line of merch. Yeah. I've got a publishing deal. I've got a record contract. I've got a studio booked. I've got a producer on board. And it's like all this stuff that listen, I've signed record deals and I'm going, come on. I've signed it. I've sat down. It's January 1st and we haven't picked a thing up. I haven't sat in a studio and played a note until March 31st. It's absolutely insane. The whole mental situation of you signing the deal and you're freaking out and you're like, this is it, the beginning of nothing. It's just all of a sudden you grind to a halt. Because you're waiting in line. It's basically, I saw this interesting situation over the Thanksgiving weekend. There was 15 Tesla cars lined up because there was only one charging station. You're kind of like, as a band, you're kind of like one of those Tesla cars. You're 15th and you sat there and you're on a holding pattern and you're waiting. You're waiting for the producer. You're waiting for the studio. With a 360 deal, you're up, you're running and you're out. And that has to be very, 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 very tempting for bands. Surely, John.
Absolutely. But again, the flip side of that is you are now no longer on your schedule. You are now subject to a whole other, layers of bureaucracy and layers of competing agendas and layers of all kinds of things that are going to, and I remember back, and it's not really a perfect match as far as an analogy, but when Green Day, signed their big deal and everybody yelled at them and said, oh, you guys stink. You went corporate. You sold out. You did all this, did all that, right? And, they had been a huge band with a huge following, totally independent. And then all of a sudden they went, they signed their deal and you sort of forgot about them. They put out their big record there. Now they have their Broadway show and all that sort of thing. And you sort of wonder, it's not just is the corporate entity going to start to dictate what your music sounds like, but they're going to control what you do with it and how you go out and how you perform. So, you're making a deal with the devil here, pardon the expression, when you have to work with a big company that has its own plans and its own agenda and its own vision going forward. How do you fit into that? And as important as that, so when we were talking about this with, they're going to be able to have their record deal with you. Okay, well, what's their release schedule? Who else is on that label that sounds like you that might potentially be in competition with you? Are you being used as a pawn to get somebody else to do something? Those types of things. Believe it or not, Tony, they happen in this industry. Yes, who knew?
Hey, but John, if it goes horribly wrong, so I take it back. If it goes horribly right, you can be wiping those tears away with $100 bills. Because if it does go right, it's a beautiful thing. But you're right. If you're stuck, and I'm going back to the Tesla thing, if you're car number 15, waiting, you're done for. You're done for. Yeah. It doesn't matter whether it's a $360 deal or a regular label deal. It's the politics are outrageous.
Yeah, and again, if you're on that label, and there's already, it already has a glut of other acts similar to you. There was an analogy with baseball teams. Sometimes they would sign a player just so another team didn't get them.
Wouldn't that be the New York Yankees, right?
That would be the Yankees. I didn't want to mention that, but yes, they're notorious for that. So again, it's like, what support are you going to have? What stability is there? If this is a company that's just popped up overnight. It's got a big pile of money, from a hedge fund or whatnot. I mean, what stability is going to be there? Are the people you're dealing with on Monday going to be there on Friday? You want to know that you have a team in place that's going to be dedicated to you and have a plan in place that they're going to follow, they're going to commit to and go forward. And these are all deal points. Remember, everything you negotiate, everything you get from a label with one of these deals or any type of deal is negotiable. And you have a right, and you have to give yourself as much opportunity to have a stop point and say, wait a minute, you haven't delivered on this. You haven't this is part of our agreement. You haven't done it. And that should free you or give you an opportunity to then say, wait a minute, this deal's not working out. Don't ever just say, oh yeah, it's going to be great. We're going to make so much money and be rock and roll stars. And next thing you know, you're playing the airport lounge at JFK. So, and then on top of that, so you have your label, then you're going on tour. How often are you expected to go out and perform? If you put an album out, what's the tour support that you're going to get? Are they going to be giving you a month? Are they going to give you more than that? Are they going to take you to different countries and outside the U.S., inside the U.S.? What support are you going to get for those types of things? Merchandise, as you were saying, Tony, that is something that's generally retained by the band or the management and the team. So if you're giving that piece up, all right, well, what are you getting in return for that? What's your split? And how are they going to handle that? The one thing you don't want is, coffee cups and stuff. I mean, tour merchandise and merchandise for your band is your band. It's your image. Remember, you don't want your face on a pen or, some cheesy stuff. You want to have a say in that as well. Then endorsements. A lot of bands, a lot of artists have very specific things they will and will not allow. And we talked about this with publishing, Tony. If somebody wants to use your song in a film, well, I don't want anything to do with smoking or drinking or violence or any sort of sexual content or anything like that.
So that sounds like a regular night in Birmingham right there.
Well, that you should still be allowed to do. If they're not, if they're going to control that, then you have a real problem. Then you better get a lot of money.
I was just making sure we were going to be real here, John. Sorry,
exactly. You don't trade those points until the very end. But endorsements, if you have something that you really, really love, but that label has a deal with other manufacturers that you don't really care for their equipment, do you really feel good about having to do that? So all of that, appearances then, as we were talking about appearances in movies and TV, etc.
Yeah.
Sure, but that's really getting outside. That means you need to have an agent, an actual proper agent, like in California or whatnot, handling that. And that should really not be part of any deal unless they're just having a yay or nay on whether you can or can't do that. And again, if it's something you really want to do, or if they're going to try and push you to do something you don't want to do, you really want to keep that far down the list of things that they would have a piece of. And then finally, the worst of all, or the one that you really want to hold on to until the very end, is publishing. Because publishing is your bread and butter. It is your lifeblood. Yeah. It's the one thing that you've done. If you've written your own music, you have to control that until the very end. And you have your writer's share, and then you have your publishing. You want to know, are they doing the right? Are they collecting properly? Have they got, have they got all their stuff together? Because publishing is a whole different animal. If you're talking about the publishing side, sometimes, we deal with majors, Tony, where the publishing side and the label side, sometimes they don't even talk to each other.
No,
right?
It's insane. It really is.
So the biggest companies that can offer you these types of deals, you want to make sure that they have synergy. They have everybody's working together, because you don't want to have somebody dropping the ball on the label side when the publishing is happening, or vice versa. You want to make sure all of that is correct. And then everything, if any deal like this, you want to have audit rights. You want to know that you can look at any statement they give you, and you can look at it and it makes sense to you, and you can understand it. And if there doesn't, there's somebody you can talk to about that. And you want to be able to say, if I don't like what I'm getting, I think I should be getting more money than that. You want to be able to go and look at the books and say, okay, I want to have an independent auditor look at this and give me the information, in a way that I understand and know that I'm not getting, hook, line, and sinker here, so to speak. So there's so many pieces to this. Sorry, go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, no, the problem with the 360 deal, it's incredibly difficult to turn down because money is money. Cash is cash. It's very, very difficult. And you're right, you've got to look into it. And of course, one thing we haven't said, you need an entertainment lawyer, big time.
Absolutely.
This guy's got to go in there and pull it apart. And here's the catch-22 with that. You don't want the lawyer to go in there and pee off the guys that are offering you a deal, but you've got to protect yourself. And unfortunately, with a lot of these 360 deals, and I've seen this go down so many times, I've been involved once or twice, it's just a vanity record. It's some guy with a stack of cash who decides he wants to be in the music business.
Right.
His mate sends him in to go and see a band. The band's really, really good. The band is really, really broke.
Yeah.
And takes a punt. So it's not only the guy with the cash, it's the band taking a punt as well. And it's a terrible catch-22 situation. But if it goes right and it all works out, my word, it's a beautiful thing. You've got a one-stop shop for everything. If it goes wrong, or if a certain part of it goes right and the rest of it is all falling apart, you may as well pack it in. The band will, it's a frightening situation, right, John?
Yeah, and that's where we can come to something called carve-outs, which is you have a 360 deal, but maybe you make it a 270 deal, or you make it a 300 deal, or something like that, by taking certain pieces of it and saying, well, I want to retain those rights, or I want to retain these rights. So if you've got a partner here who's come to you and said, I want to sign you guys to a 360 deal, you say, okay, what are you offering? What can you deliver? What are you able to deliver? What do you want for those rights? And then what are we going to get in return? So you look at it and you say, okay, well, listen, we don't want you handling our endorsements, okay? We don't want you handling anything that we do outside of music. So if it's appearing on a TV show or whatever, we'll work with you. We'll have a partnership on that, but we don't want you to have final say on that. That's our thing. A label is going to want to have control and a piece, obviously, of touring and live performance, that sort of thing. But we want to handle our own merchandise. Okay, fine. Yeah. And you can drill down to very, very specific rights. There are certain things like digital products, like ringtones and stuff. You can say, well, no, we want to have a higher percentage for that. And not just the control of it, but what piece of that you're getting versus what they're retaining. So you can work all through that and say, oh, I want to carve out, so to speak, this specific right or this specific right. You see the coppers are coming for me again, and say, okay, we want to have a little bit more control of that. Which anybody who's worth their salt, and if they really want you and they love you and they want you on their team, they're willing to work with you on that. They'll come up with a way to make that work for you.
That's exactly what I was about to say. If they want you bad enough, believe me, they'll work with you. I mean, if I can wrap it up, what I would actually say, and maybe you'll agree with me, and I'm pretty sure you will, know what you're signing and know who you're signing to.
Right.
You can take away anything from this podcast, remember that. What you're signing and who you're signing to are paramount. Anyway,
sorry, just one last thing. And if you're looking for an attorney, make sure they have experience in this part, because this is a unique situation. You know, I don't want to say anybody can negotiate a record deal, but doing a record deal is one thing. Doing the publishing and all of these other aspects, these are different skill sets that you have to have as a negotiator, and you need to know what rights you're talking about. So yes, always make sure whoever you hire to work on your behalf and do this, make sure they know what they're doing and have a track record in this space too, because that is as critical as anything. You want your team to be as strong as possible in support of you in making these deals happen.
Fantastic advice, John, seriously. I want to thank everybody for listening today. Don't forget to like and subscribe, as always, to our podcast on YouTube. And you can catch all of our episodes on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, InTune Radio, and Stitcher. Want a bit more info? Check out our website at www.musicmindspodcast.com. Until next time, stay warm, John. And to all of you out there, be good to each other and see you next time. See you later, John.
Take care, everybody. Thanks, Tony.